went to mechanic school in Keeslerfield, Mississippi, and I learned to work on airplanes, and I worked on B-24s until they come out with the B-29. You know, the B-24 was the biggest bomber we had. And then when they come out with the 29, it was bigger. And we got them, and I worked on them until the war was over. That was the plane that they dropped the atomic bomb with.
Oh, was it?
Was the B-29. And the reason for that, it had a long range because it could go farther and come back. And so they used it and dropped the bomb on Japan. And you young people might have people tell you that we shouldn't have dropped the bomb on Japan, but if you talk to any person that was in service at that time, they'll tell you they're glad that they dropped it on there. Of course, the war was over and we got to come home. And that was a good thing about it.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up? Your family status, I guess, or?
Well, my dad, I grew up during the Big Depression, and my dad was a farmer, and we grew up on the farm, and there was a lot of people that during that Big Depression that was hungry and begging and all, but we didn't have to worry about something to eat because we made what we eat on the farm. We had corn that you could grind that corn, and you could make grits, and you could make cornbread, and you know, you separated. So we had grits and cornbread, and then we had chickens. We had eggs. We eat the chicken. We eat the eggs, and we had gardens that we made stuff in that we eat and can, and there's something they tell you now, I'll kill you if you eat it. And but that's hog lard.
Oh yeah.
And but we would fatten the hogs as fat as you could fatten them, and then you take all that fat that they had, and you would dry it out, put it in wash pots, what we call them old pots in the yard. And we would dry it out in that and make so many cans. You know about how many cans you need to last you through the next winter. Of course, you kill the hogs and stuff in the winter. And you would can that lard. Well, you use that lard to make bread and to cook everything that you use shortening and stuff now. But we had lard. And then we had milk cows that we milked the cows. And so we had plenty to eat that we made. And we were fortunate. But like I say, the people that was looking for jobs and worked and all, they were one quarter. They were 25% of the people that were on the workforce that was out of a job. That's one out of every four. It didn't have work. And it wasn't because of them not wanting to work. You know, you got a lot of people today that ain't working because they don't want to.
Yes, sir, you do.
But at that time, the people just couldn't find something to do. And a story, something that happened at that time that I've always remembered. We lived right about a mile out of town, and the railroad run by our house, and people would hobo the train, and when the train slowed down for this little town, they would jump off. Well, they would come up to our house and begging for something to eat, and my mother would always give them something to eat. And what she had cornbread, we had sweet potatoes, and she had home-cured meat, and she would always give them some of it. Well, the thing that surprised me one time was a fella come up there, his left arm was cut off up to his shoulder, And he asked my mother, said, "Do you have something I can do for something to eat?" And she told him, "No, not really," but she'd give him something to eat, and he told her, "No, thank you." And so he was going to leave without something to eat. So we had a bunch of limbs, pine limbs in the yard, you know, in the wood yard. And she told him he could cut up some of them limbs because she didn't want him to leave hungry. And so he went out there with that one arm and he grabbed that whole pile of limbs. And so when he got through, she gave him something to eat, and then she took a paper bag and she put potatoes and meat and cornbread, you know, stuff that he could keep for a day or two. It wouldn't spoil. She gave him a bag of that to take with him to eat. And I've never forgot that. I said, that's what you call really is
Honest,
pride.
working, right.
Just pride. He had pride. He didn't want to be a beggar.
Right.
He wanted to work for what he got. So he was going to turn down a free meal. And so she let him work to have it. So I never know my mother to ever tell anybody we don't have it. They would come by and she would always give them something.
Right.
Sounds like a very sweet lady.
Do you know what was in the cornbread she made? Do you know what was in the cornbread she made?
It was meal, and then she would put some of that lard and mix with that meal, and that was basically what it was, just the meal, the cornmeal.
My grandmother did the same thing. Like, she would mix the lard and the cornmeal together and just fry it in a pan. She made it for us once. I didn't like it. And it's not the cornbread I'm used to.
I love cornbread.
But now my mother would, you know, she had a bread tray that she made biscuits, and she had it was a wooden dugout bread tray, and she would put that flour in there, and she'd put a big hunk of that lard in there, and she would mix them biscuits up, and most times she would use milk instead of water and mix it up. And them made real good biscuits.
I bet they tasted really good.
And she'd always pinch them little bits of roll and put them in the pan, cook them.
So do you think your mother like influenced your eating habits later on in life? Like,
you know, I can't remember. Otherwise, they cooked what they had and they put it there for you to eat. I don't remember however deciding whether it was good for you or not. You just put it there in front of you and you eat it. And so it was, they didn't have like today that what's nutritious for you or whatnot. People eat what they had and was glad to get it. And I feel sure that we eat some things that wasn't really good for you. But they did tell me one time, you know, so-and-so is good to eat, and I was getting pretty close 90 years old, and I told her, I said, you know what? I said, I've always eaten what I wanted, and I ain't gonna change now.
yeah.
I'm gonna go and keep on eating.
Yeah.
Do you ever eat fast food or anything?
What?
Do you ever eat fast food or anything? Burger King, McDonald's, or anything like that?
Growing up, no.
No.
We didn't. They didn't have them. You know, I grew up when we didn't have a radio.
Right.
And when somebody in the neighborhood got a radio, which some of them did with a battery to run it, because there wasn't no electricity, on Saturday night, everybody in the neighborhood would go to their house to listen to the Grand Ole Opry out of Tennessee.
Yeah.
If you had a radio, you had a lot of company. So